This is Truth TOK. We are truth-oriented knights out for the promotion of meaningful discussions to foster democracy. At Truth TOK, we believe the force of argument supersedes the argument of force. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome yet again to another episode of the show Truth TOK. We are truth-oriented knights, and we believe that the force of argument supersedes the argument of force. Today we are going to be debating issues. We are going to be having a rematch of our last session. Our last session, we were talking about the evolution of Cameroon, that's pre-1960 right down to maybe today. And we also looked at the return of Paul Biya and its implication on the crisis. So we understand that for about 2 months, close to 2 months, he was out of his country, and later on returned. And there were a lot of speculations. There were a lot of things, eyebrows raised, and we did talk a little bit about this. So today we're going to be having a rematch to understand some of these things that we talked about last session. In some cases, we're going to be having a deeper dive into some of these topics, so that we ourselves understand and you, the listeners, understand the evolution and how some of these things have impacted our lives and resulted into what we are experiencing on the ground today. So Kwakwa, let's start off with you. From our last session, we talked a whole lot on the evolution, and you did start from, say, annexation. We looked at German Cameroon, its evolution, its transition into the British Southern Cameroons, British Northern Cameroons, La République du Cameroon being administered by the British and French post the First World War. That's after the partition, after the war, and the Treaty of Versailles had to come in to partition these territories in Africa owned by the Germans, or being mandated, or which had been annexed by the Germans. So today's episode, how or where would we want to start to have a deeper dive into some of these things we talked of on last time, and where are some of these controversies or some of these topics that people haven't explored more, and you think that it's led to what we are experiencing today, for better understanding?
I think, like we talked about last time, Cameroon, like an entity, we talk about annexation. But I want to begin from the time of the partition. I think the idea of identity, of two different identities, came at the point of the partition. Between 1884 and 1916, it was a single territory. We will say one identity by under the Germans. But then you will see that after the partition, we now get into the system of the colonial rule, where we have system of administration. The Britain adopting indirect rule, and the French started with probably assimilation, and then they had different colonial policies that they took to administer their territory. I think that the conflict in question as of right now is as a result of these varying ways of their colonial policy, which in a way gave two different personalities for the two different territories. And the French, I would say, did a lot to develop French Cameroon compared to what Britain did. And you look at the time of independence, French Cameroon was far more advanced than West Cameroon. And in a way, these people are looking at it as, okay, we are advanced more than these persons, and now we are joining with them, and they are coming to benefit from what the colonial masters did to develop our territory. That's something I see. Now, the problem starts with the elite. I think the problem we're having now is not a problem with the francophones, right? Because at times most people juxtapose the two, and like, okay, Anglophone problem is caused by Francophones. The Anglophone problem is not caused by Francophones. But for me, it is caused by Cameroonian elites. And these Cameroonian elites are found in both areas, the Anglophones and the they are Francophones. And this elite distinguish themselves based on the colonial rule. And you have those who went to Nigeria, studied abroad, came back, went to the Eastern Regional Council, who left, started their own bloc. And then you have those French Cameroonians who studied abroad, came with their own mentality. And they started forming political parties from there based on what they have studied, looking at their colonial masters. And I would say because of assimilation that made the people to look like French people in everything, their dressing, their eating style, and everything. They saw themselves. Even today, the Frenchman still sees their civilization, their race, their nation as the greatest nation on earth. They see themselves in terms of hierarchy, like that they're better than every other person. Historically speaking, Napoleon conquered Europe because he made the French people to think that they are the greatest in Europe. So if we are the greatest, every other person has to be under us. And so they taught this philosophy from the time of the French Revolution. And it extended right to the colonial period, making their colonies think that they are like the French and are superior to every other person. So in that union, they saw themselves as superior because of that French identity that they had. So I think this is an area where we need to look at and look at the political parties, the pressure groups, and the way they identify themselves during this period from 1916 to independence.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And my understanding of the various forms of administration, or the models of administration by these colonial powers, or uh, by the British and the French. So the French using assimilation to transform the people into a different people. That's giving the people a different identity. It's giving them the French identity. It makes them Frenchmen. And I mean, you are portraying this particular model of administration as was better off because maybe there was more development in French Cameroon, and the French Cameroonians saw like we're coming to tap off from something of theirs. I don't think that's the case. The indirect rule, which was the model of administration by the British, uh, that's Britain, rather gave the people the power to be able to administer themselves, to be able to rule themselves, and then they just sat there in the positions of leaders to see that, okay, you guys rule yourselves in a proper manner. They took power and gave it back to the people. I think when we look at, say, democracy, if we're talking about a democratic country, then we should rather hail this model of administration, because that's what still gives the people their identity, and gives them the power they need to be able to progress. And I think that what you brought up is a very critical matter, leading to the crisis, because these are two separate or two opposite models of administration. It's like mixing water and oil. They are immiscible. So when you have such two diverse methods of administration or models of administration, to have them unite, or to have them, form a unanimous mixture, it's or homogeneous mixture is practically impossible. Ngabo, is that your own take from I mean, my side, or are you looking at it from Kwakwa's perspective?
Um, yeah, I look at like he said, I look at these two distinct countries that came together with different policies or different forms of governance. I do not look at the idea of assimilation from the point where he was looking at. I look at it from this coming together. I see the problem, like I've seen from some articles that I've gone through. One Peng guy who was saying that this kind of relationship that is bringing Southern Cameroon and French Cameroon together is a kind of relationship that is like a marriage, where Southern Cameroon looks like the wife and French Cameroon looks like the husband. Why? Because they were already developed, like he said. Yeah, they were at a certain level. They had the population, they had everything. So these people were just coming like a people that are going to come under control. And what I want to think is that instead, what these people did was that they they actually instead decided to transfer this form of government that they learned from their colonial master to these people that were coming to join them. So by so doing, they then decided to put their assimilation onto the people from Southern Cameroon, which was then where the problem is. I can quote from the speech that President Paul Biya gave when he was giving an interview in France. And he said, we tried to assimilate them and it did not work. I hope that everybody knows this. It has been trending on social media since 2000 and I cannot remember, 2021, when he made this famous speech in France where he said, we tried to assimilate them and it did not work. It showed that it was a well-calculated agenda to assimilate the French, the English-speaking people, similarly as the French assimilated them.
Exactly, because what happens is you become Frenchmen, you have the French identity, and then you think like the Frenchman and you want to act like the Frenchman once you have been assimilated. So it's trying to get the world into all the territories being controlled by France into a French colony, which is something we shouldn't be clamoring for. I think that's from where uh, stems this crisis as well, because the people of the British Southern Cameroons think that our culture or our identity is something we do not play around with, we do not joke with, we hold it to a very high standard, and we are not willing to trade this for anything. That's why I say they are immiscible. Sir Kwakwa,
Okay, let's go back to the colonial. This is it, right? When I say of assimilation, let's not forget that the French adopted different colonial policies. I use assimilation as an example, right? But even then, the idea is about domineering or a dominance, right? Having the upper hand in terms of that arrangement. Now, the French did a lot of development in their territory. Now, unlike the British who practiced indirect rule, there was really no significant number of military personnel in West Cameroon under the British. But under the French, they had a military arm. So even after independence, when the French handed over to French Cameroonians, there were personnel who were in the military. Unlike in the British territory, there were fewer persons who were in the military. When you look at it, that's because they are trying to transform these persons to look like them. And so, in a way, French Cameroonians already have that power because majority of them are already in the gendarme, right? And right up to some few years ago, the gendarmes used to be seen. I don't know if it's still the same case, seen as a force under the French government in France. Even though they're working in Cameroon, most time they're getting their salaries from France, right? Which means they established that force in Cameroon, but to work on the behalf of France. And with French Cameroonians there. There was not the same case in British Southern Cameroons. Now, take this situation up to the point of independence, right? You see that in terms of military, they really have an upper hand. Now, they talk about that they try to assimilate us in field. It doesn't mean that we have to look and act like the French should be assimilated. You go to police stations, you go to government offices, even in Anglophone Cameroon, the notice board is full of French posts. You see things there communicates in French, right? And those papas and mamas who come there, they can barely read English. How
okay.
come you don't understand and read and understand French? So that's the idea that they have not assimilated us the way we think that the French did to them, but they have imposed their own system on us that we are forced. The way we study French in school is not the way the Francophones study English in their schools.
Mhm.
It's just of recent that some of them has now seen the importance of English internationally, and it's seen that the culture of the Anglophones actually has value on morals. They are making their children have to study it. But at this point in time, they see their own language, their own culture, and those things, those tenets of colonial rule are superior.
Yeah. So the system of assimilation, I mean, like we are saying, and the system of indirect rule, I think both territories coming together, especially from the side of Southern Cameroon, saw this, and that's why they decided to get into this union in a federal manner as federated states, knowing that the people are still going to maintain their identity, the people are still going to have power, and we just have somebody overlooking us as two states, and that's how progress should be made. And we further went into having the parliament or the administrative arm in Southern Cameroon's dissolved, uh, and we found ourselves right down in the situation of changing the name to the Republic of Cameroon, which was the name as an independence. There was a very important reason for having that name, saying the Federal Republic of Cameroon, knowing that we have two different people, two people of different cultures, but coming together to grow. It's like having a husband and a wife in a house. You do not definitely expect that the wife would be entirely the husband in every way. They have their two different personalities, but they come together to see that we make life together. How can we put our heads together but still work towards a common goal? And that's what we failed to achieve. Like you said, we didn't have the power to be able to enact some of the laws which were put in place, like after uh, the law of 1984, the law number 84/1 of February 1984, where it was called the Restoration Law, and it was called the Restoration Law for a reason, meaning that the state of La République du Cameroun, or the Republic of Cameroon, was restoring its name across the entire territory of both La République du Cameroun and Southern Cameroons. So to me, it was rather some sort of an annexation, and you are going to hear this a whole lot when you listen to arguments from Southern Cameroons. Sangabo, is this your own view, or how would you like to analyze the situation? We are still looking at the evolution, or do you have a different area you would like to start from, or you would like to highlight? Let's critically look at it.
I don't want to call it an annexation per se, but I will always say that it's a form of assimilation. And this is an agenda that was planned. I don't know if it was something to say was planned between Amadou Ahidjo and France in the 1960s. Because if you look gradually, you say from 1961, when Southern Cameroon got their independence, everything that was being done, every law that was put in place, almost every agreement that was made was not followed. It shows that it was a well calculated thing of actually assimilating the people to become Frenchmen, even though they claimed they wanted to preserve the culture, they wanted to preserve the identity of the Southern Cameroonians. This was not the intention. The intention was to wipe out the culture of the Southern Cameroons and then make them pure Frenchmen. And that is why you see in 1972 a kind of memorandum.
I think we're losing Ngabo at that point, but he was talking about 1972. I think that's when we have the history of 20th May, right? Where we had the vote between the vote which had yes and we finally had ourselves drowning in a situation called the United Republic of Cameroon. Sangabo, you're back.
Yeah, sorry, my network was not good. So I was saying that if you look gradually, you see from 1961, it was a well-calculated agenda up to 1982, where you were talking about this restoration. It shows that it's something that they already knew. We were coming to this relationship as with pure hearts, with pure intentions to belong, to live together, to preserve the cultures of French and English and so on. That is the view of the Anglophone person coming into this relationship. But the other side, the stakeholders or the people of the French side, like Amadou Ahidjo and the crew, did not have this. They had their agenda of how are we going to completely assimilate these people as to become few French men so that we can restore our country. So it was an agenda. And up till today, I think is still being worked on because it started from the 1961 to 1972 to 1984, and later on in life, you were seeing that there were even more Francophone teachers in the Anglophone regions than before. So it was a process. And I think the process is still going on. If something is not done, they are still going to achieve it. Like Kwakwa was saying, everywhere you go to billboards, you go to all communications are being sent out in French. You want to write concours are being published in French and everything like that. And many other things that we need to look into that we cannot be taking all the things into this meeting. But I want to say it was a well-calculated agenda from 1961 till date.
Mhm. I mean, we can be using different words, but I think we are implying the same thing. You're focusing on the word of assimilation. I think they are acting more like colonial powers or a colonial power. That's why some of us focus, or some people focus on the word annexation, saying that this territory has actually been annexed because they are acting a whole lot like the like these powers. Kwakwa, I'm guessing you differ from me.
Well, I've been hearing this idea of annexation, but to me, I don't think it's annexation because um, we are complaining now about it being an annexation because probably of the idea of marginalization, but it will be annexation if we don't. Because, let me look at it this way. Like I said in the beginning, the Anglophone problem is not caused by Francophones; it's caused by Cameroonian elite, and
Mm.
elites are found in both the Anglophone section and the Francophone section, right? So if it is an annexation, it will be Francophones versus Anglophones or the Francophone elite taking over in totalita. But we have Anglophone elites who are part of the central government of Cameroon, right? You have like Ataga is Minat. So who is annexing when an Anglophone is head of Minat? We have late Mukete and other persons, like even the prime minister presently, are part of that government. So when I say
I'll make the argument that these are people who are now Frenchmen because they have been assimilated. So they are no longer say Anglophone Cameroonians, but they are now Frenchmen. Same thing with French Cameroonians are now French people.
let me
That's that should be a valid argument.
can I learn?
Yes.
Yeah, that might seem like the case, right? But it's either you are assimilating the whole or you are assimilating the part. Now, when you talk about these few persons, and it's about where you get the benefit, right? What I say is a capitalist ruling class of some particular elite who benefit at the top, and they don't see or concern themselves with those who are beneath and who are suffering. Now, let me reverse a bit to the early late 1950s and early 1960s, right? I'll bring two parties up: the UPC and the OK, one Cameroon of Ndetu Manza and the UPC of Yobe, right? Now, they had one view. In fact, the one Cameroon came as a cover up for the UPC when it was banned in French Cameroon. And the
Yes.
idea of the UPC was Union de Population or the Peuple Camerounais. They had the idea that they wanted a united Cameroon, even those were in the Francophone areas, right? And they were radicalized so much so that they were fighting against the French colonial rule and wanting independence of Cameroon, like one single territory and one single entity. Now, these persons were Francophones in French Cameroon, but saw the Anglophones as brothers who were part of German rule and saw the need of uniting these two territories. Now, one we could not come and say, okay, this group of UPC militants they have adopted the Anglophone system. It was about a view and what was of interest to them and what they saw as a philosophy that is better for every Cameroonian. But the difference here is that those who are working for the government and how do I put it, affiliate themselves to the government, see it as the right thing to do and see that it's okay. It's a territory. We are part of the Anglophone section. We are working for the national territory and they don't see anything wrong with it. I cannot say that that is assimilation because Cameroonians, Anglophones are still writing concours to go and that's Anglophones still writing concours. You will say, okay, they're looking for a future for themselves. But if it's annexation, certain things will be limited to Francophones alone. Now, we can talk of dominance and marginalization because the same favors, the same opportunities that are given to Francophones are not given to Anglophones. But if it's annexation, it will be all about Francophones and nothing about Anglophones.
Mhm.
The constitution
Uh,
itself gives the prime minister to be an Anglophone when the president is Francophone. So
and we
if the
know that
president is
that's just a ceremonial position. That's
ceremonial, true. Even from the time of the Fumban conference and everything for the federalism and federal state, it was all ceremonial. Because like I said, they had nothing backing them up. Just cajole them, give them promises, let them sign the document that we one, and then after that we'll show them paper. And that's basically what happened. It just
mm.
was a matter of unfolding step by step to the point where we reach 1972 and they give us a vote for yes and no. Oh, yes and yes, we, yes, and then and this is where we are. So I think
Songabo, do
that
you want to respond to that?
No, I think that I support the idea that is not an annexation, but an action. These are people that came into a relationship with not force them. This probably want to go into this relationship. So they should be respected for that. And for that reason, I think that some kind of things need
Uh,
a referendum of deciding their situation.
you're talking about referendum. We might come to that if time permits us to look at a statement which was made by the incarcerated Abdul Karim Ali, a peace crusader. Uh, but post the 1984 revisit of the constitution and the change of name, we had the law passed in the Bamenda High Court, uh, recognizing that this restoration law is illegal and has by that law, the people of French Cameroon or La République du Cameroun has decided to opt out of the treaty or the union they had at 1961, and this gave this is a legit argument which is placed forward today, saying that these people have seceded and therefore the law of creation of states applies in this case for the people of Southern Cameroons, and that's the argument which is put forward as one of the arguments put forward to say that these people are an independent people and should be left to manage themselves and have nothing to do with La République du Cameroon. So, Kwakwa, are you familiar with the law which was passed in the Bamenda High Court?
yeah,
We are
you mentioned
going to come a little bit to what you mentioned, the UPC and the OK, but the Bamenda High Court declaration of the law which was passed and the fact that a court passes a law in a state, but this law cannot be put into place or cannot be enacted, speaks a whole lot.
remember last I think last for the part one I mentioned the aspect of rule of law and separation of power, right? In Cameroon is written but it's not applicable, right? So the court can give a judgment and he who has the power overturns it and nothing will be done. That's basically it. The courts in Cameroon don't have the power to adjudicate like they're supposed to do as per constitution. Because when there is separation of power and every branch of government is enforced, can enforce their own aspect of the power division, when you give a law like that, you can enforce it and implement it. But Cameroon is that kind of country where a court can enforce that kind of judgment passed. So you can give it, but as to how we go ahead to implement it, that's where the problem lies. Do you go and tell the president of like public that okay, since you passed this statement, you signed this law into action, therefore these two territories are separate. I say okay, we're going to separate ways. How do you enforce that? Because independence is not just given by word; it's given by it has stages, right? Obviously, countries have to start recognizing you like okay, you are independent like this, and other international laws have to maybe put those things in place. But just for a court signing it, it cannot just happen and come to be. So I think that okay, it was signed, but implementation becomes a problem when you don't have
So,
that
so
power
we
to
have
enforce.
we have that court which passed that judgment, right? The Bamenda High Court.
Yeah,
Let's say that we are disregarding that, and we come right down to the issue of Bakassi, the conflict which was in the Bakassi Peninsula, and the judgment which was passed there, saying what was the judgment passed there, and let's see how this judgment gives the people of Southern Cameroon's autonomy. Do you have an idea of the judgment which was passed?
yeah, they were Cameroon and in fact, Biya and Obasanjo were told to go back and maintain their boundaries as at the time of independence.
As
Now,
at the
when we
time
talk
of
about
independence.
yes, so French Cameroon had independence in 1960, right? And the border of French Cameroon ended at Mungo, and you can take it right up to the north, where it separates northwest, southwest from French Cameroon. And Bakassi and that of Nigeria was at Rio de Rey, right? Meaning the territory from Mungo and Rio de Rey was not part of this Green Tree Accord, which means in a way it gave that territory independence, and President Biya signed it. True,
Exactly.
that's the logic behind the argument. I bring it back to the level of enforcing that
So
particular
if
agreement.
if we are disregarding the Bamenda High Court because they do not have the power, there's the separation of power, and they do not have the power to enforce that law. We're not talking about say the biggest court in the world, in the entire world, the international, the ICJ. That was the
Mhm.
ICJ that passed this law, right? And
Yes.
if we are saying that the biggest court in the law cannot enforce laws passed, then I begin to question what we are doing in this court, or what role these courts are playing, or why go ahead to bring forth cases in the court of law when nothing can be done about it.
Remember, I mentioned some time ago that certain organizations like the UN, the ICJ, the ICC, laws passed there can be implemented only by the powers that be, based on what is of interest to them, right? So this particular law, just like okay, the ICC, is it the ICC that has ordered the arrest of Nathaniel?
Netanyahu.
Nobody can do it, right? Because basically, who enforces that arrest? Because the powers that be don't really care about what he's doing. They are actually backing him up. So
Well,
basically,
well, well. The aspect with that is a little bit different,
let me
because some of the ICC is a court which is not recognized by quite a number of states. Like the United States of America does not recognize the ICC, and its jurisdiction. The Israel does not recognize the ICC, but the states that recognize the ICC, like Canada and the UK, have actually come out in public statements saying if Netanyahu should step his leg in any of this country, he's going to be arrested. So maybe to some extent they are enforcing the law, but in the case of Southern Cameroon, the ICJ, which is recognized almost by everybody, this law is not put in place to say that okay, this is the territory. But we understand that one of the then United Nations Secretary General was visiting Cameroon, and presented two flags, or two maps rather, to Paul Biya when presenting gifts. Presented a map showing La République du Cameroon, and presented a map showing Southern Cameroon. This was a clear message to Paul Biya, but I think he either decided to ignore it, or he disregarded it, or or just wanted to play like he doesn't understand?
I don't
Then
think that it was about him playing like not understanding. The idea is what we're talking about is not a law actually, it's a technicality, right? In the agreement, right? Now I believe the whole argument was okay, you this land because General Gowon signed a treaty with Cameroon that gave Bakassi to Cameroon. That was after independence, many years after independence. When they were talking about going back to the boundaries at the time of independence, I don't think it was in the mind of those drafting the agreement that they should go back to separating the territory or carving out the territory of Southern Cameroon out of this agreement. No, I think it's a technicality that from Goji Dinka finally figured out years after. So I think that presenting that map, right, is from that technicality, yes. But the idea is who enforces it because it has never come out from that Green Tree Accord as in okay, since you have maintained your territory at the time of independence, the territory between this French Cameroon and Nigeria is now out of the picture and is something entirely different from these two nations. It never came out like that. If it had come out like that, then the discussion would have been different. But now, as I said, it's a technicality, and enforcing that technicality becomes difficult.
okay, okay. But I think we can build a case on that. We can build a
We can.
case on that. But the United Nations should be able to if we're talking about enforcing the law and we're looking at the armed force in enforcing the law, the United Nations has that and should be able to provide the people of Southern Cameroons that protection because they are responsible for the entire people. I mean, they are the cause of all this happening today. That's the argument. Um, if we should digress a little bit from that and look at the return of Paul Biya, because we do not have so much time on our hands. But if we should look at the return of Paul Biya, we last session we did look at his return after spending over 40 days and its implication on the crisis. But today, let's look a little bit on his return from his international trip 2017 and the statement he made. He made a very public statement after six armed forces, or I think there were six policemen and four gendarmes killed in the southwest region. And he made a very public statement, and that was on the 30th of November. So it's been 7 years since he made that statement, and some people called that statement the declaration of war, and that's what has escalated the crisis of 2016 to what we have today, with tens of thousands of lives lost, and there's no clear map or no clear path charted for us to return back to normalcy or a way forward. Sangabu, let me have your take on this situation, the return of Paul Biya, his statement, and what it has led to this day. So Kwakwa, if you want to jump in while waiting on Ngabu's mic to be steady.
Well, every sovereign state and the leader of a sovereign state, because the truth of the matter is, as per international law, so as of right now, Cameroon is one and indivisible, like the president mentioned, and so they see it as an insurgency, and so it is something they have to quell, right? That's why they term them as separatists, secessionists, and whatever name that will be given to them. So maybe refer to them as terrorists. I believe that every leader in that kind of situation has the need to combat that kind of situation. People raising arms to fight against government troops. So when military personnel are killed like that, the government has to make a show of force. And in that situation, it comes with retaliation, like making sure that you know that we are still at the top and we have the ability and the power to make you suffer and to make you feel the effects of your actions so that going forward, if you think that you attempt this and nothing will happen, there are consequences of every action that you take. So I think as a leader of Cameroon, that was within his power to do.
Mhm. Uh, Obviously in the wrong direction. But you talked about the statement, the very popular statement saying Cameroon is one and indivisible. Uh, uh, um, an extension of that statement says that the form of the state cannot be debated, and this is a statement we have heard a whole lot, especially from Atanganji. The form of the state cannot be debated. Uh, but we understand that the form of the state was debated and changed from what we had as the Federal Republic of Cameroon to La République du Cameroun, to, right up to the United Republic of Cameroon. So if you debate changing the form of the state from what it was to what we are having now, why then can we not debate the form of the state now to take it back to what it was? You say it's off the table. And then the question that if we can vote to have this, as you claim that the people voted to have this, why can the people to get into this union, the people of Southern Cameroons voted into this union? Why can these people not vote to get themselves out of this union? Bringing the question of a referendum, like Ngabu said, and like Abdul Karim said in a public statement.
Well, it brings us back to the aspect of how it was done, right? Normally speaking, if referendums come from the people, not from the government, it comes based on maybe what the people want. Like they start talking about it, requesting for a change, and then the government sees the need that okay, let's see if this is what the people want, and then you go to vote for it. But in the case of Cameroon, the government just said and said, okay, I think it's time for us to clear these guys off and then clear this idea of federalism and totally bring Cameroon under one united state, right? And the other they vote. Normally, it's supposed to go through a process where the people do something that necessitates that they go to parliament, parliament votes okay, it's required, and then they now organize a vote. But in Cameroon, it was just done by the president in a way, and then the votes were not actually a vote that we can say it was an election, democratically speaking, right? So they used their power to get us to where we are now. Now, do we have the power to make them overturn it and go back to that situation? I keep going back to the power, the question of who has the power to enforce the change. Those who are asking for that change don't have the power to enforce it, right? And it doesn't matter those who have the power. Cry all you want, nothing will change. Now, people out there should understand when we talk about a unitary state, a federal state. I think what the difference is, right? I just want to give out there. Normally, in a federal state, right, you give power to a central government, and then they relinquish part of that power or some of that power, or they delegate it back to you in the state level where you have some power that you can do stuff your own. Now, in the unitary state, you give the central government power and they keep it to themselves, and they can do as they wish. They decide to give you small or not, or you can do a confederation where you give them and they give it back to you, and you just have a small council that basically does everything for the name of the nation, honorarily speaking. That's what we have in the UN. And that's why they really can't do anything for themselves because they don't have the power, right?
Mm.
As an organization, the power that the UN has comes from the member states. And the members are not all equal in power. There are those who are at the top. Some have veto power, some don't have veto power. So in circumstances, how do you enforce change when some things favor those who have the power to veto and doesn't favor those and that who don't have the power to veto? So if it doesn't favor America and the veto, it ends there. Nothing can be done. So I think this whole question is a strata of things that when we look at it, it becomes so complicated and so cumbersome to really treat. So who has the power and who can enforce change? In Cameroon, the government has it, and there's nobody who has that equal power with them. So how do we make it happen? How do we go back to pre-1972 or before independence where we came into that union? It was voluntary for us. Like Gabu said, we voted willingly to join them. Our politicians, our political elite at that time had their political philosophies and they saw unification with French Cameroon as the ideal option. Nobody like PM Kale and Achimbi looked at the situation and said that joining these two guys is not an option. Let's go independent. But they're not popular. So we are suffering from the consequences of the inability of our political leaders to forecast and foresee the future and the consequences that it will bring on us.
Okay. So Ngabo, do you want to say something about that, respond to that in any way?
I don't have much to say. My internet has not been good. I have not participated well, but I was trying to pick out some few things. Like he said, it is about implementation. Like I said in the last
Yeah, so I think that your internet is still shaky. So it's not all the way smooth, it's glitchy. I think let's leave it at that for the evolution of Cameroon, return of Paul Biya, and let's have this public statement which was made by Tibor Nagy again. We looked at a statement he made last time. Let's look at another statement he made this time. In this case, it's a different territory he's looking at, but let's see how it correlates with our own situation. And so that's the statement he made. So Nigeria behind arrest of Simon Ekpa because of his Biafra advocacy. In US, we have movements for Texas, etc. to leave US. That's freedom of speech. Maybe if Nigeria addressed Northeast extremists, Northwest kidnappers, mid-belt violence, etc., Biafrans would be content. I'm bringing up this statement because we know of an alliance which was made between the people advocating for Biafra and one of the very prominent groups fighting for the recognition of the state of Southern Cameroon, that's the AGOFC. And his statement here implies that these people are simply asking for an out of this territory because of the way they have been treated and because of the way mismanagement and the government has not actually listened to the grievances of the people. And it's in the same way what we have in our territory. I think that's what the people advocating for Biafra have so much in common with the people advocating for the restoration of the statehood of Southern Cameroon. And that's what is turning this area into a hot bomb, into a hot area for all the activities going on. So we know that they share boundaries as well, and we know that the people, some of the groups, I think one of the groups fighting for the restoration of or for Biafra actually came into Cameroon, got the Dio of Idabato, kidnapped him and took him to their area, to their hideout, and were asking for a ransom of over, I think, 700 million, but this ransom has not been made available. So the question I have is, a man of this caliber, an administrator of this caliber being apprehended by these people, and a ransom being asked, and right up to today there are speculations of him having been killed already. What does that say of the government of La République du Cameroon?
Okay, let me just rewind a bit. Just 1 second. You see, when it comes to the Biafra and the Anglophones, I don't really weigh it at the same level. Why? Because the Biafra people have had presidents from their section who have been in power, right? I think those were the persons who would have enforced their demands and made whatever aspect of marginalization they're talking about to evaporate. But look at the fact that they've had presidents of from their region and they're still complaining about that. Going back to the time of the Biafran War, I think that is about this. Is it about elitism? The elite doing what suits them, not the people. Now, I think most governments in the world have this aspect of not negotiating with terrorists. We cannot, and it's propaganda because why will freedom fighters from Nigeria come and kidnap an administrator in Cameroon? It tells you that the separatists in Cameroon may now be in union with the freedom fighters from Nigeria. Now, government paying a ransom in countries like Africa and Cameroon in particular will be determined based on the ability of the media to pressure the government to do it. If in America a student is kidnapped in Iraq, the media will pressurize the government by talking. Associations and other organizations will talk about it so much that the government will be forced to do it. And based on the freedom of speech in those countries, people can actually talk about it and the government will see the need to do it because if you don't do something, they can elect you out of office, right? But we don't have that situation in Cameroon where even if the president doesn't do anything about it, anybody can do anything to force his hand. So I think it will only be about talk, 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 talk until it becomes dire that like they were releasing videos and videos and videos and videos that the government might feel the shame of not doing anything and say, okay, let's pay this ransom. But I think he still has to get to that point. And if the man is dead as said, now the attention that turns to another person, who next are we going to kidnap to make a statement that will actually matter and force the hand of the government to do something? So our
And
government is not
it's seeming like it doesn't matter who is being arrested for this to happen. Maybe if because it said that okay, this guy is from Southern Cameroon's Ewane, so maybe there's no the ill fate of the government of La République du Cameroon, because of ill fate they are looking at, oh, it's one of theirs, so they can have him. And maybe if one of theirs from French Cameroon is taken in this manner, they are going to respond, because we know that some years back, a few years back, is it 2 or 3 years back, 7 delegates were picked up in Indian division, I think, and their carcasses were later found. Um, that says a lot. That says a lot for a government which is supposed to be responsible for its people and is supposed to ensure the safety of the people. These are people serving the government, doing all in their power to make sure that the government's hand reaches out right down to the grassroots. But if these people are picked up and some little monies, I'll call it little monies, are asked from the government to secure their release, but this is not done, and these people their dead bodies are later found and handed to the families. And in some cases, the families are not even compensated. Like, if we should ask the question, how many military men do we know who are deceased, and how have their families been compensated? We know not of any compensation in these cases. So it speaks a whole lot to the kind of government we are dealing with, and I think that's the more reason that gives people a greater drive to demand for a restoration of their statehood, the people of Southern Cameroons. Am I understand? Sangabo.
I think that yes, you are right. I think that this is a failed government, a totally failed government that does not recognize its people whatsoever. The Anglophones have the right to fight for what they are fighting for. Why? Because we have seen certain things like this. The 7 you coined that were kidnapped and being killed. This one is just an example. The deal of Ndian that was just taken recently, it's another example. But then when you look at the government, you look at some few years back, it happened to French citizens when Boko Haram were kidnapped.
Exactly.
They paid billions to release them. Then you see that this is a government that does not care about the people. They truly do not care about their own people. But when it comes to French citizens, they paid billions to Boko Haram to release the French people. They gave them a party at the White House before they were being transferred to France. And then when it comes to your own people that are saving you, you do nothing about, and you expect. So this is a government that you cannot expect anything from them whatsoever. it is a failed regime.
So Kwakwa, I think that this will be very difficult for you to dispute. You would have to agree with us on every statement said here.
Unfortunately, that's not the case. I think we really can't look at the situation of this hijacking and kidnapping to evaluate whether the government is for the people or not for the people, or to say that okay, because it's an anglophone, you go solve your issue that way. I think, like I said, the show of force is a very significant and important aspect for every government, right?
Not just like Ngabo has raised, right? The people who were picked up, the minister's wife who was picked up in the far north region there by Boko Haram, lots of monies were paid to secure her release and the release of the others who were picked up.
Now let me
So
come to that.
it sends a
The
clear
situation,
message.
I really can't look at the Boko Haram situation and the situation of whoever came from Nigeria, because I see believe that's propaganda. And the separatists from Southern Cameroon who are fighting for independence. I think Boko Haram, they have been doing that is mainly their modus operandi, right? They kidnap when we started talking about Boko Haram, it was when they kidnapped is it 360 young girls in Bochi State,
Okay.
somewhere like that in northern Nigeria. That's when they came to the limelight and started talking about them. It is the way they operate. They kidnap, ask for ransom, right? They don't only have that's how they fund their terrorist activities. So with them, they kidnap, they ask and you pay, and Sava, they move on. That one is much more of an international crisis because most of the persons who were kidnapped and the minister's wife, they know they can pay and they can actually negotiate with these ones. Now, in the case of this deal, I think it's a bit different because they know for a fact that these guys are working hand in glove with the separatists. If at all, it's not the separatists who did are claiming to come from Nigeria. So, how do you distinguish? How do you go and pay? The argument is that if you don't show that you don't negotiate with them, they will be asking for more, right? If they kidnap this duo and you pay, what next? Do they go for the governor or somebody higher?
So,
So
so, so it couldn't apply in the case of Boko Haram in the north.
yes, Boko Haram,
They couldn't read it in that same manner. I don't.
let me say this.
I think it's
About is
very
about
irresponsible of a government to look at
Yeah,
things in that
it's
manner
irresponsible. In my view,
look at
it's also irresponsible because if it's something that is supposed to be applicable like that, it should have been applicable the same way.
across the board.
These people were not
what
even
you said is
Cameroonians in the first
what
place, and
when I talk
they were not French diplomats. They were
It,
French tourists.
yeah, it doesn't matter who does the kidnapping or who is being kidnapped. As long as there's a kidnap by somebody, then the government of this person who has been kidnapped should be able to guarantee their safety, to be able to negotiate for their safety or for their return. I think that even the United States, which says we do not negotiate with terrorists, like you said, it's simply propaganda. The United States has, in so many situations, negotiated for the return of its citizens. Even we talk about Taliban, we talk about the people in Iran, we talk about all these terrorist organizations. The United States has designated them as terrorist organizations, but have had their citizens being released by these people. So it sends
I
out the
do
clear
not buy
message.
that idea. It's totally irresponsible to do that.
now.
Even if you cannot do it as a state, there are many ways of doing it to get
Yes,
your people
like for example,
released
the
if
United States
you
does not
actually do care.
directly negotiate. The United
Let me
States does not directly negotiate. It goes through somebody to have that negotiations done. That's why they claim they
Yeah,
do not
now.
negotiate
yeah,
with terrorists.
exactly.
This is it. This is how we're looking at it now. Like, let me put it this way: the United States does not negotiate with terrorists. They will never do it publicly, right? We cannot say for sure that the government of like Republic is not doing that very kind of negotiation like America is doing. Now, two things we are missing here. These persons who were kidnapped in the north are internationals, right? So there is pressure coming from another country that the government of Cameroon should do something about it. Now, the situation of the divisional officer is a Cameroonian kidnapped by a separatist or what freedom fighter group in Nigeria. There is no pressure from anybody, not even the citizens of Cameroon are saying anything about it. So the reaction will be based on the pressure that the government gets to act. Next thing is Boko Haram is not looking for territorial gains. So the government doesn't really have the same pressure or the same focus to fight them as they have with fighting the separatists who are looking for territorial gains. So the circumstances and what is at stake.
Well, I don't call it territorial gains. It's simply giving the people back their territory. But then
No,
let's
no, no.
I think that is just a matter
Like
of being irresponsible. I don't know
legally speaking, you don't have a
how you
territory.
want to describe it, but the simple words to use for them is that they are irresponsible. They
it's an
don't want to
irresponsible,
do.
it's a wicked government. It's a
Yeah,
government.
it
Let's
doesn't
look for
care
the
about
worst
its
words.
people. And that is
Exactly.
why sometimes you need to think
Where
that
would
the
government
Anglophones have the right to
in that
rise and
regard,
say no to some of these things.
I think
Yeah.
there are many persons who have been kidnapped and who have been released. In a way, there are no senators who have been kidnapped and who have been released. So we should give them some credibility.
No,
And
no, no, no. In a lot of the cases, I know the families had to do the negotiations by themselves and have their family members released, had to pay hundreds of millions, squeeze it out from anywhere. The government disregarded them. The government didn't do nothing about it. We know of people who have been asked to go to their job sites and work. They have been arrested or they have been kidnapped, as you want to call it. The government has done nothing about that. The family members have had to contribute monies. Some of them have lost their lives. We know that people's businesses have been raised. People have been asked to defy ghost towns and open up their businesses. Their businesses have been raised. The government has not given a penny to these people. It is a very wicked government. It is the reason why the people advocating for Southern Cameroons have a very legitimate case to advocate for Southern Cameroons. But then we're going to leave it at that. I'm going to have your last statement, and we're going to announce a development with the program Truth TOK. First, let's have you give us the development with Truth TOK. We are going to be doing something in the days coming. So, Kwakwa,
okay.
you want to break the news for us?
So our project has been going on for a while now. I think we started in February, if I'm not mistaken, and we have been working, having this debates, projects, working on stuff. So having content that we're creating and putting out there for people to understand the background of our project. And so we want more persons who are interested, who have come across our content and are willing to join us in these discussions, join us in this project to see how we can create impact and awareness about this crisis, pass out knowledge out there, give a different perspective about this whole crisis from its starting point in 2016 right up to now. I think there are many ways people have gone about this crisis, trying to bring solutions to it, and we are taking a different approach. I want more persons to join us. So, come the near future, we'll be sending out a communique out there, press release that will be inviting persons of interest or persons who have interest to join our project and have a say about this Anglophone crisis.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sangabo. Let me have your last statement and on the topics we have looked at, and maybe something to add to the development with our project, and then I'll have Sir Kwakwa's last statement concerning our discussions of today, and we call it quick.
I think that for the development of the project is so far so good. We have made a step, and like you said in your statement the last time, that the Cameroon government is doing its part in restoring peace. The separatists, or as some people call them, they are doing their part in restoring peace. I think
we lost Sangabo again. We lost your audio. So Kwakwa, if you want to just jump in and give us your last statement.
We spoke about a lot today. I must appreciate this particular session, and it was wonderful. I must say it live
that
on.
this is not going to end here. It's also going to continue even after the crisis is solved. We are still going to do our debates, look at other aspects, other political issues in
Exactly.
Africa, and even why not the world at large.
Yeah.
And
So
for my last word concerning the evolution of Cameroon, I think we have discussed a lot, and I still can say, like, I know the last time we were talking about whether the government is responsible or not. Like I said, the last time, the coming of Paul Biya and the rest, whether he comes, whether he's alive, whether he wins election or he doesn't win election, whether he's president or he's not president, the structure that the CBDM has put in place, I don't think that even if he's not president today, anything is going to change much. If the Anglophones want something for themselves, let them take the destiny into their own hands. That is my last word as far as this is concerned. Over.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, and throwing more light. I'll have Sir Kwakwa's last statement, and then I'll conclude it.
So I want to appreciate this particular session. We discussed a lot. It was really good, and I like the way we approached the different topics. So we've discussed a lot today, a lot of things, and it brings us back to the government and the wicked government, as some persons mentioned during this debate. And most often, at times, it's so easy to point fingers at the government as a wicked government, as an irresponsible government. And what many people fail to understand is that we Anglophones are also wicked to ourselves, like we're wicked to each other, because I've seen atrocities committed by those who are supposedly fighting for the freedom of the Anglophones, committing acts that are despicable to their own people. And so I just can't sit and just point the fingers to the so-called invader and the so-called person who has annexed, because those who are claiming to fight for our freedom, for our liberation, are inflicting pain on the people themselves. So before we look at the stick in somebody's eye, we should look at the timber in our own eye and take care of that first. Because this crisis is being prolonged as a result of greed as well from the side of the Anglophones. So, like I said, there is a class of elite who are harvesting and gaining rewards from this crisis. In fact, from the prolonging of this crisis, we need to look at this stuff. These persons who want the world to continue so that they make gains. So, in as much as I'm not happy with the government, I'm also not happy with those who are fighting for freedom, because the approach is not so favorable to many people. People have lost their lives from the hands of the boys who have branded them as blacklegs. So I think we are becoming barbarians to our own people, and the government itself is becoming barbaric to its own people. So in a way, these two parties have to know that they are people who just want to survive for a day and give them that gene of
I
survival.
think we should look at that in a subsequent debate, looking at the government forces or the government, and we look at the things from the standpoint of the government and from the standpoint of the separatist forces and their acts on the ground, and who's responsible, who is irresponsible. But then, thank you all for engaging in this debate session of today. Looking forward to our next debate, and to conclude saying that, like the two panelists have said, we have come quite a long way into this project. I dropped the project to a couple of friends or a couple of comrades sometime last year, exactly 1 year ago, and we started working in February. We've been building slowly on the ground, coming up with several documents, and as of now, we think that we are good enough to accommodate more participants, and to have the impact we intend to have. It's a massive project, and I want to enjoin you all. I want to call on you all. I want to beckon on you all who are listening, and who want to be the change to actually engage in this project. Sign up as temporal participants or as permanent participants, and let's be the change that we intend to see. Thank you very much. And from Truth Talk to you listening, it's bye-bye. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Truth Talk, follow us on YouTube, and engage with our content at Truth Talk. And we are going to see how to expand to other media channels. Thank you, and bye-bye.